Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I'm with the North Central Texas Area Agency on Aging and the North Central Texas Aging and Disability Resource Center, both of which are under the umbrella of the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Today, once again, we're incredibly blessed to have Dr. Ron Mottern with the Mottern Institute to talk to us about codependency. But before we get started, I want to spell out a little bit of information about the CEUs for those of you that are on today to get CEUs. We're set up to provide CEUs for licensed social workers and licensed professional counselors within the state of Texas. I've had people that have gotten the certificates that have used them for other licenses within Texas or outside of Texas. That's just hearsay. So there's no guarantee, but you're more than welcome to go through the process and get a certificate and submit it to whatever jurisdiction you'd like. But just know it's up to them whether they will accept that or not. If you have any problems with the state of Texas, you're more than welcome to get back with me and I'll help you work through that. We're also offering a certificate of attendance for those of you that would just like that. For attending today's webinar, we're offering them for 1.5 hour CEU credits. You must complete the entire webinar to be eligible. You must also complete the Google survey, evaluation survey. That is a requirement for anybody wanting a certificate, but we also ask everyone to complete it if you would. It helps us in reporting back on our goals and objectives that we set out when we applied for the funding to do these webinars. If your survey doesn't pop up as you get out of Zoom today, it should pop up, but I realize some companies and people have pop-up blockers. You will also receive that in a follow-up email from me this afternoon as well, that link. The Google survey will stay up for 1 week from today at 5 p.m. and then give us a couple of weeks after that to get you your certificates. And just so you know, the last one we did, I was working on certificates this morning. I had a little bit of a glitch. Those certificates should go out here the next couple of days. So bear with me if you will on that. So Dr. Mottern, if I could get you to move to the next slide and we'll talk about you just a little bit. So Dr. Mottern is the Executive Director of the Mottern Institute for Mind Body Wellness. He has 22 years of experience in-person and worldwide treatment, virtual treatment in cognitive restructuring, behavioral modification, emotional regulation, and physical improvement. He's also a published author of the book, Living Well, A Guide to Cognitive Behavioral Skill Exercises. So that being said, Doctor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me once again. I'm glad to be here. We're on a roll today. I had a presentation earlier in Austin, so came back and now we're here. So hopefully my tongue will be unwound for this particular one. Today we do want to look at codependency. Why can't the other person see it and what can I do to help? As far as the agenda goes, we want to look at what do we mean when we say codependency? What are we really talking about there? That definition has changed over the years. So today, what does it mean when we're looking at it? The difference between codependence and interdependence. Of course, interdependence is the other end of the scale from codependence, and that's really where we want to be. And then what can I do about codependency? And then some resources that you may have for that. So what is codependency? Well, in general, these days, codependency is talking about a psychological construct that involves an unhealthy, imbalanced relationship in which one person enables another person's self-destructive behaviors. Now, there are other definitions of codependency that I've seen which say that it's a balanced relationship between a narcissist and someone else. I'm not sure I go with that. If I'm in a codependent relationship with someone and I'm not the one with the codependency problem, doesn't mean I'm a narcissist. Okay, so I don't know that I follow that definition. This is pretty straightforward. This is pretty simplistic. That when I find myself in a relationship with somebody else who has problems, and I'm sort of enabling that problematic behavior, then there may be some codependency there. So what does it mean when we say enable? If I enable another person's self-destructive behavior, what does that mean? Well, it means I protect them from the consequences of their actions. And I've seen this time and time again over the years. Now, it especially occurs usually with parents and children, right? So one thing is, if your kids make a mistake, that's fine, right? You should always have their back and do that. But if it happens more than once, if the same behavior happens more than once and you step in to stop that, you're not doing them any favors. Okay, protecting them from the consequences of their actions is not doing them any favors. You may think you are, but let me tell you from my experience over the years, when I've seen parents do this, what it ends up is just with a long history that devolves into more and more significant consequences for the child, which they become an adult, and then they may end up incarcerated. They may end up in prison, in treatment programs, and things like this. And if they had been allowed to accept the consequences of their actions when they were younger, that may not have occurred. So if I find myself repeatedly, I'm not saying just, for one time or if there's a good reason, but if I find myself repeatedly stepping in to save my loved one, whoever it may be, from the consequences of their actions, maybe some codependency going on there, maybe some enabling going on there. Another one is keeping secrets about behaviors of your loved one. So when I'm enabling somebody, I'm not telling everybody everything that's going on right now. Everything that happens isn't everybody's business, but on significant issues, right? So my wife didn't show up to the fundraiser that we had planned today, and I make up an excuse about that on why. Oh, well, she had something else to do, when maybe there's another reason for that. Maybe she was too hungover to show up, or no self-disclosure here. I'm not talking about my wife, just in general, right? My loved one, whoever it happens to be, I'm making excuses for their behavior when there's really not a good excuse for it. But I don't want anybody to know that there's a problem. Another example of enabling is refusing to follow through with boundaries and expectations. This is going to become very important if I want to help deal with codependency. I may have codependency problems, someone else may have codependency problems, but I want to be able to set good boundaries, good expectations, and then follow through on them. If I set boundaries and expectations and don't follow through on them, then I'm not really doing anything, am I? Okay. Well, I'm making these boundaries, I'm making these expectations. Yes, but you're not following through on them, so you haven't actually done anything, right? So that would be an example of enabling. Making excuses about my loved one's behavior, similar to the keeping secrets thing. I'm not telling people about some things that are going on. If I make excuses, I'm making up another excuse for that. Once again, we're not talking about one time, right? We're talking about a pattern of behavior over time. And then that last one, just avoiding the topic of my loved one altogether. I don't want to even talk about them, okay? I don't even talk about them because I don't want to have to make excuses. I don't want to have to keep secrets. I don't want to have to do all of these things to deal with that. So that's what we mean by enabling in the context of codependency. As I said, codependency, the definition of it has sort of changed over the years. Originally, codependency was used to describe a person who was living with or in a relationship with an addict, okay, with an addicted person. So that was the original one. It is broadened over the years. That's no longer the only context in there. In fact, now it refers to a specific relationship addiction, okay? Not a relationship with an addict, but a relationship addiction characterized by extreme dependence, either emotional, social, or physical, on another person. I don't know how I just moved that. Okay, there we go. The codependency usually involves making extreme self-sacrifices to satisfy someone else's needs. So I'm always putting my own needs at the rear to let someone else's needs come first. Now, once again, this is not something, if I'm a parent or something like that, or even if, with my significant other, whatever that may be, I may sacrifice, right? So that they can be happy, because that makes me happy to see them that way. But that's where I have to sort of be careful. Am I not getting my own needs met? Okay, so that's the very important part there, is in a healthy relationship, both parties get their own needs met. If I'm in a codependent relationship, I'm not going to get my needs met. I'm sacrificing them in many cases for someone else's needs, because I'm sort of living through them, right? And so that's what that's talking about there. Those extreme self-sacrifices to satisfy my partner's needs. Okay, so what are some examples of codependency? Well, trying to control, change, or fix the other person. Now, I dare say that many a marriage has begun with that thought in mind, right? Many a relationship has begun with, I'll just fix them after we're married, right? Or after we're together, or what have you. That's not necessarily codependency. That may be wanting the best for your partner, right? So we have those situations where, I want them to grow, I want them to improve, and I'll support that. Not the same thing. Remember, codependency is not a good thing, right? So I want to control or change or fix the other person because they're not interested in it. Okay, that's really the point there. Once again, it's like, if we have a child who we're constantly stepping in as they're growing up through their teenage years, then to their adult years, we're constantly stepping in and getting rid of the consequences of their actions, because I think, well, that will fix them. Okay, they'll see that I care, and this will give them another chance. And I've seen that so many times, and so many times it does not work out that way. It ends up sucking the life out of the person who keeps stepping in, right? While the other person doesn't really care. They don't have to worry about it because somebody else is going to take care of it for them. So that trying to control, change, fix the other person because I want them to be different, that may be some signs of codependency there. Once again, if I enable that destructive behavior, whatever it happens to be, maybe it's use of substances, right? Substance use disorder, things of this nature. So I enable that. Maybe it's other criminal behavior, right? Or juvenile delinquency, things like this, that I may allow that to occur. Maybe it's just within the context of my relationship, right? Where I enable destructive behaviors that may be destructive to our marriage or our relationship or something like that, that I will enable those as a way to save it, right? As a way to save our relationship, I'm going to enable destructive behavior that will actually destroy it. But I have a hard time seeing that at the time. Caretaking for other people, what that means is I clean up their messes, okay, or try to prevent the messes from occurring to begin with. So once again, sort of an issue of control, right, where I'm stepping in and cleaning up somebody else's mess that they've made. And I don't mean, they dropped the milk on the floor. I mean, they've created a mess at work. They've created a mess in our social life, whatever it happens to be. And I'm the one who has to go in, try to smooth things over, go in and talk to the boss and try to reason with them, these sorts of things. Go in and try to talk to the authorities, whoever they may be, right? To try to prevent that from becoming a bigger problem than it is. Once again, the caretaking is sort of the same as enabling, right? But in this case, I may try to stop it before it happens. Lacking personal boundaries, once again, that is so very important. Now, you will notice as we go through some of these things and we look at the difference between maybe what is codependency and what is interdependency and things like that, that some of these characteristics may sound familiar to you, right? So we've done previous presentations on things like substance use disorder. So remember that codependency was originally associated with substance use and things like that, with addiction. So some of these characteristics may seem familiar. We've done previous presentations on antisocial personality disorder, on criminality. Some of these things may sound familiar. Or with narcissism, right? We've done on that too, narcissistic personality disorder. So some of these things may look familiar. They're not the same thing. Remember their characteristics of that. So many different things can share characteristics. So don't think that just because I share a characteristic that makes me narcissistic or that makes me antisocial or whatever it happens to be. It may be the case because other people can be codependent, but doesn't necessarily mean that. So for the lack of personal boundaries, things like that. We've also looked in the past at things like borderline personality disorder. And oftentimes that's what you'll find. In fact, that's the sort of the example that they use for when they say it's a balanced relationship between a narcissist and someone else with mental disorders. And the mental disorder in that case that they used for an example was borderline personality. Borderlines have a fear of abandonment, irrational fear of abandonment, right? That's part of the disorder that they have. Unfortunately, they often act in such a way to cause that very thing to occur, right? Sort of acting out of self-fulfilling prophecy there. But that lack of personal boundaries can be a sign sort of the borderline personality, but that doesn't mean that we're diagnosed as that. That doesn't mean that I have to be that. It just means that I lack some personal boundaries, okay? I can be extremely self-critical. In fact, there's a couple of different kinds of codependence, and that's characteristic of one of them. Talk about those later, where I'm extremely self-critical of myself, or extremely self-critical of the other person. It can be either way. Being separated from the other person brings about anxiety and fear of abandonment. Once again, that's sort of characteristic of borderlines, but not specifically, right? Not only borderlines. There are other people who, if my loved one leaves, then I may be very anxious, right? It may bring up fears of abandonment, but they may not be irrational. So you have to look at this and really examine this and say, is this codependency or is this just something, a normal part of life and what have you? So hopefully some of the resources will help you do that as we look at this as we go on. Obsessively focusing on other people's behavior, on the other person in the relationship, whoever that may be, who I'm codependent with, right? Obsessively focusing on their behavior. Now, there's a reason I do that, and that is because that how you feel is going to determine how I feel. I only feel how you feel if I'm codependent. So I want to focus on them and see how things are going for them. And if things aren't going well, what am I going to do? I'm going to step in. I'm going to caretake. I'm going to try to make everything all right, right? And that may even include crossing personal boundaries in order for me to do that. But I want to do that because I can't have my own feelings. My feelings are tied to your feelings. So that's codependency. Once again, sacrificing my personal needs in order to feel needed by the other person may be a sign of codependency as well. And these are just a few of the examples, okay? We went through a few of them, but this is just a few. In fact, Beatty has over 200 characteristics that describe codependency in her books. And this is, if you're looking for a resource, this is sort of it. This is the classic book that when we talk, when we're in treatment and we have somebody who's codependent, this is the book we give them and tell them to read, right? You need to read this book, Codependent No More, right? Her second book was Beyond Codependency. And then she has some others. I think one of the newer ones is The New Codependency, looking at it for today's generation, what have you. But she has identified at least 200 characteristics that really describes codependency and the dynamics of the relationships that go on there. In fact, they even use a shorter version of that in research called the Beatty Codependency Checklist. So it's not quite all 200 items. It's a shorter version. They do use that in research, sort of as an objective measure and what have you. So this is your first go-to. If you know that you're codependent, if you think you might be codependent, this is where you want to go. Codependent no more. Okay, Amazon.com. If you're Prime, you can probably have it here tomorrow. Okay, Amazon Prime, you can get it by tomorrow maybe. But then they have this one, which is both the first and second books, Codependent No More and Beyond Codependency. And then that newer one, if you may want to take a look at it. If you want to hear Beatty talk about codependency and her journey with this and why it's important to her, you might look at the link that I have there on the YouTube video. It's the Provocative Enlightenment Presents podcast, and he's talking with Melody Beatty and her journey with codependence and what have you. So give that a gander if you would like. These are the two types of codependence, if we're going to break it down into two different types. One is the caretaking codependent. That's where I'm stepping in, I'm caretaking, I'm trying to make everything okay. And then you have the low self-worth codependent. Now, those are not strictly separate, right? They will tend to be more caretaking and less low self-esteem, or the opposite, more low self-esteem, less caretaking, but they're both going on, okay? Both of those things are going on. If I have low self-worth, I'm also going to do some caretaking. If I'm caretaking, I'm also going to have some aspects of low self-worth. So those are generally the two types, excuse me. If you want to look at a longer list of those 200 characteristics, there's your PDF of that, okay? If you just want them bullet pointed for you, don't have to go through and read all the books, then you can go that. Treehouse Recovery puts that out. Once again, codependency is still very tied to substance use disorder. Now, there is another group called adult children of alcoholics, okay? And this is for adult children of alcoholics. The name is pretty explicit. But they may have grown up in a family where the parent was an alcoholic and what have you. And so they may develop certain survival skills that look very close to codependency. Adult children of alcoholics make the point that that is different from codependency. It's not, there's some overlap between the two, but just because I was a child of an alcoholic or an addict does not mean that I'll be codependent. Okay, so you can be codependent and not the child of an alcoholic or addict, or you can be the child of an alcoholic and not codependent. So one doesn't necessarily mean the other. So there are some differences between those two groups, but there are also some similarities between it. So you may see that group out there as well. But this is the codependency. How to know if I'm in a codependent relationship? Well, these are a few examples. If I'm unable to find satisfaction in life outside of a specific person, I can't exist without you. You are the only one that I can exist with. Now, once again, some of that may be true love, right? I'm thinking the Princess Bride here, true love. Okay, some of that may be that. But in general, I'm not looking for it, right? I mean, I may be in a very significant relationship with someone and then break up, and I may feel like, I can't live without this person or what have you, but eventually I start to move on from that. Okay, eventually I start to look at other relationships and what have you. If it's codependency, I'm not going to let it go on that long to ever recover from it. I'm going to start intruding on this, crossing personal boundaries and things like that, because I have to be with this other person. I must be with this specific person, or I can't be happy in my life. I can't be satisfied in my life without that person. Maybe a bit codependent there. And this is okay. And this assumes that we already had a relationship. Okay, this isn't a relationship from afar where I'm looking at a celebrity or somebody like that, and maybe something else going on there. But this is, we already have a relationship that somehow broke up, that somehow disintegrated, but I'm determined that I must be with this specific person. You recognize unhealthy behaviors in other people and your partner, but stay with them in spite of it. Okay, so I know that he does this or she does this, and I know this isn't good and it's not right, but you know what? I'm going to stay with it anyway. Why? Well, because I can't ever find satisfaction outside of anyone but them. Okay, so you see how those sorts of things sort of tie together there. You give support to your partner at a sacrifice of your own mental, emotional, and physical health. Once again, in parent-child relationships and significant other relationships, we may do that because, we want someone to succeed or what have you, we want someone to be happy, but not sacrificing my own health. Okay, so I'm not sacrificing my own mental health. You need to come up with a win-win. This is what we do as adults, right? We come up with win-win situations in which not only can the other person get their needs met, but I get my needs met. Anytime that I'm in a relationship where I'm only focused on the other person's need at the detriment of my own, and it's always going to focus on the other person and not my own, that may be in a codependent relationship at that point. Okay, so just a few things that you may take a look at as you move forward in your relationships with other people. We often have, those people, am I codependent? You think I'm codependent? Well, you need to evaluate that, right? You need to go through the checklists and what have you. We'll get to some of those in a minute, where you can sort of evaluate that and be honest with yourself. Maybe it's not codependence, maybe it's just life, stuff going on, but maybe it is. And a good way to know that is if other people are telling you that you might be codependent, right? Let myself be open to feedback of other people. If more than one person is telling me this, right? If I have friends, if I have a support group who tells me, we think, you're spending too much time with this person, you're not spending time with anybody else, your other relationships are suffering, we think you might be codependent. If I start getting that from a couple of people, then maybe it's something that I want to take a look at. Okay. So codependence versus interdependence. Now, interdependence is where we want to be. Codependence and interdependence are on opposite sides of the scale. So for example, codependence says, I must agree with you and you must agree with me, right? Have you ever known anybody in that relationship that they have had to agree with each other all the time? Well, that's codependence, okay? I must agree with you, you must agree with me. In fact, the presence of that must there tells us something, right? If you're familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, especially rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a type of CBT. Albert Ellis, who was the founder of that, used to talk about different kinds of behavior, especially characteristic was beliefs where we had shoulds and musts, and the behavior based on those beliefs of things should be this way or things must be this way. And the must was the worst, right? We hear that must, we know we have a very strong belief behind that. So you must agree with me, I must agree with you. Number one, it tells me there's some cognitive errors going on there, but also maybe some codependency, okay? Interdependence, on the other hand, would say, I can have my own thoughts about things, right? We don't have to agree about everything, right? I know me and my wife don't agree about everything. Certainly, she has her own thoughts on certain things, and I have my own thoughts on certain things, okay? That's fine. The world is not ready for two of me, right? So as long as somebody's different, that's great, okay? So I can have my own thoughts about things. You can have your own thoughts about things. That's okay. That would be interdependence. That would be where we would want to be with things, okay? And once again, this is sort of where we get into similarities with things like narcissism. If you were with us on our presentation on narcissistic personality disorder, you're familiar with the concept of narcissistic rage, right? And that usually comes about when somebody disagrees with me, right? That's when I get this narcissistic rage. Not me, I'm just saying. But anyway, that's where we get that narcissistic rage, is when people disagree with me on things, okay? So that's sort of similar there in the codependence things. You must agree with me at all times. Another example would be codependent says, I need you to feel okay, and you need me to feel okay. That without you, I can't be good. And without you, I can't be good. Okay. That's very unhealthy. Okay. Now, when we have that, we end up with a Romeo and Juliet scenario, right? People think, oh, Romeo and Juliet, how nice. No, remember, they both ended up dead, right? They both ended up killing themselves. Not good. Okay. So I need you to feel okay. You need me to feel okay. Not okay. All right. The interdependence part of that, the more healthier aspect of that, is I can depend on you without losing myself. And think about a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage, something like that, is that you depend on your spouse for certain things, but I'm not lost in them, right? I don't lose myself in them. I can't do anything without this other person. Okay, that would be codependence. Okay, but in interdependence, I can depend on you for things that need to be done, that we discussed and we talk about, things like that. And I don't lose myself in that. I can do it myself if I have to, but I'm going to depend on you to do it for me now. Okay, so another example of codependence. I must worry about you more than I worry about myself. Okay, now this is that sort of sacrificing and worrying about someone else more than I worry about myself. Not good. Okay, now there is sort of that selfless thing that we have, that we want to do for other people, and because we care for them, and that's fine. But I can't do that all the time. I can't only care about you, and I especially can't only care about you more than I do about myself all the time. So the healthy aspect of that would be, I can love you and I can love myself at the same time. I can do what's good for you. I can sacrifice some things in order to make you happy and things, because that makes me happy. But at the same time, I'm not going to give up doing what I need to do to be healthy for you. Okay. And when I stop doing what I need to do to be healthy for you, because I want you to be happy, if that becomes a pattern of behavior, then that can be problematic. Maybe I'm codependent there. So making sure you take care of yourself at the same time that you take care of others. Like I said, one doesn't subtract from the other. Okay, so I'm able to take care of you and take care of myself at the same time. If not, if I'm taking care of you at the detriment to myself, any sort of pattern of that behavior, and I keep using that phrase because remember that's what we want to focus on, is patterns of behavior. Something happens once or twice, does it mean I'm codependent or whatever? No, of course not. Okay, it's just something just a one-time off thing, right? But if it's a pattern of behavior 2 or more times, then I may want to start looking at it. So codependence says we must have the same goals, ambitions, and dreams in life. Okay, now how often does that happen? Okay, I don't know. I don't know of much where that happens in normal relationships. Do we share certain ones? Do we share certain goals, ambitions, and dreams? Sure, that's what draws us together, right? That's what makes us come together. That's why we get along with each other. We can even be very different in disparate sections of our life, as long as we're good on certain other things, right? So on certain goals, ambitions, and dreams, those are going to cross. That's what brings us together. However, that must is key right there, right? No, we must have the same ones. So that's not good. That's codependence. Interdependence, we both respect one another's goals, ambitions, and dreams. I respect that you have different ambitions in your life than I have in mine, different goals, different dreams in your life. I don't know if anybody ever saw Don Juan DeMarco was the name of the movie. Johnny Depp was in it. Marlon Brando was in it as well. And the story is really about Marlon Brando and his wife, but it's ostensibly about Don Juan DeMarco, which is Johnny Depp. But in that, as we go through and pay attention to that, we notice that at one point, Marlon Brando is in bed with his wife, who's Faye Dunaway, I believe. Faye Dunaway played that. And he asked her, he's like, so what are your dreams? What are your ambitions? And she's so taken aback, right? She's shocked. Like, what do you mean? What do you, they had been together for 30 years or 40 years, whatever it happens to be, as husband and wife. And he had never asked her what her goals and ambitions and her dreams were in her life. So that's something that we probably want to look at to improve our relationships. What are your goals, ambitions, and dreams? And if they're different from mine, we can negotiate those differences, right? It doesn't have to be just this or just that. We can negotiate those differences so it's not always me, so that you're moving toward your goals, you're moving towards your ambitions and dreams. If that's not the case, then it may be codependence. We got to have the same ones. We got to all be focused on the same thing. This is what we got to do. That may work in the business world, for a team or something like that. Seldom have I seen it be healthy in human relationships outside of that. So once again, may want to look at that movie. It's a good movie. I recommend it. Don Juan DeMarco. May find it on HBO Max or Netflix or something later on. Anyway, that asking your partner, right? Asking your significant other, so what are your goals and ambitions in life? Have you ever asked them before? Let's negotiate. So let's try to meet them. Okay. To look at some more of these. Codependence. We lie to one another about how we feel, saying we're okay when we're not. Now, why would I do that? Well, because how I feel and how you feel must be the same, right? So if I don't think that you're feeling good, then I may not feel good either. And if I am feeling good, I may lie to you and tell you I'm not, because we have to be the same, right? So not good, okay? In interdependence, we feel safe enough to express how we really feel about things. That's one of the things with codependence, where we're always lying. And it's one of the things that makes it so nerve-wracking, and it makes people who are codependent so anxious all the time, because I have to constantly be scanning the other person and know what's going on and trying to interpret using a lot of mind reading, right, which is a cognitive error. Trying to mind read what's going on with them so I can adjust myself to how they feel, okay? Because I can't feel good unless you feel good. And that's not healthy, okay? That's codependence. In interdependence, we feel safe enough with each other. There are days when you're not gonna feel good, right? You're gonna have a bad day, and I can have a bad day. I used to go to school with a guy who was in graduate school. They had a rule, him and his wife had a rule, that only one of them could have a bad day at a time. So say, oh, wait a minute, yesterday was your day to have a bad day, today is my bad day. But they couldn't have a bad day at the same time. So that was sort of a rule they had in their relationship. But so one of them would feel safe enough to talk and say, hey, I'm having a bad day and what have you. And that's what we want. We want that ability to feel safe and not anxious, right? I want the ability to feel authentic in my relationships and not false. And that's what we get sort of with the codependency, that facade of everything's okay when it's a box of cockroaches on the inside, right? It's not working at all. Okay. Codependence, I must say yes all the time. Now, once again, why would I need to do that? Because we got to be different, right? If you ask me to do something, obviously you want me to do it. So I got to say yes, right? Interdependence is, I know it's oaky, to say no. Should be okay. I know it's okay to say no. Okay, no, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to go here. No, I don't want to. I don't want to eat at that place. Okay, which as an example of that. But if it's codependent, I have to say yes all the time. Yes, that's fine with me. Yes, that's perfectly okay, even when it isn't. Right? I find myself saying yes to avoid some sort of conflict. Now, once again, conflict is okay in a relationship. We don't want to have it all the time, right? But conflict is okay. We can work that out. It helps us grow as individuals. It helps us grow in the relationship, whatever that relationship happens to be. So conflict is all right. We don't want it all the time, but sometimes it's okay to say no to something. No, I'm not interested in doing that. Okay, I'm focusing on my needs. Okay, not just on the other person's, but I'm focusing on my needs. No, I don't want to do that. If you want to do it, then go do it. Right? That's what healthy people do, right? And they go do things by themselves if they can't find somebody else to do them with. And just because I don't go with you doesn't mean I don't love you anymore. But that's sort of the way it feels in codependence. If you go off and do something without me, then you must obviously not care about me, right? So once again, it gets back into sort of that imagined abandonment and things like that, those issues. Codependence, you are responsible for how I feel, and I am responsible for how you feel. So hopefully, I've given enough examples of that as we've gone through here, because that's really characteristic of the codependence, right? Is if I do something wrong, I'm going to make you feel a certain way. And if you do something, then you're going to make me feel a certain way. Once again, that's a cognitive error. I can't make you feel anything, and you can't make me feel anything. My emotions are based on my thinking. I can choose to change my thinking at any time I want. I am the only one in charge of my thinking, which is I'm the only one in charge of how I feel. But not in codependency. Codependency, why do I feel upset? Because of you. You're the reason I feel upset. Okay, why are you angry? Because of you, obviously. Okay, and vice versa. But not the way it works. Interdependence, we know that how we feel is an inside job. Okay, we're the only one in charge of how I feel, not dependent on anybody else. I'm always in control of my own thinking. If I choose to think a certain way, that's how I feel. Okay, so if I don't like the way I'm feeling, I can change the way I am thinking about it. Okay, if you're interested in a good video on that, some of the work, some of the research that comes from that statement, Lisa Feldman Barrett, you can find her on YouTube. She wrote the book on how emotions are made. I don't remember the name of the YouTube video right off, but if you go to YouTube, you search for her and you put in how emotions are made. She has a TED talk in there. It's the TED talk you're looking for. That'll pop up in the choices. But the TED talk she gives is very good. It explains this from a psychological perspective and what have you. So I'm responsible for how I feel. You're not responsible for how I feel, and vice versa. Codependence. When I'm unhappy, I fall apart, or when you're unhappy, I fall apart. When I'm unhappy, you fall apart. And I'm afraid you may leave. Once again, that fear of abandonment, and I see that often in some of the clients I have and what have you. That fear of abandonment, because that may be their history, right? They may have been abandoned when they were kids. May have been abandoned many times. But so I have this fear that it's going to happen again. And I do what I think I need to do to keep that from happening. Okay. So when you're unhappy, boy, that's when I'm really going to start enabling you. I'm really going to start caretaking you, because I'm afraid that you're going to leave at that point. Not good. Okay. Interdependence. I listen to your needs without feeling threatened. Okay. I'm not worried. I'm not on pins and needles that just because that you're unhappy at the moment, that you're going to leave me. Okay. In fact, in relationships, we often talk about there being three entities. Okay. Excuse me. Three entities. There's you, there's me, and there's the relationship. Okay. And I can be mad at you and you can be mad at me, but as long as we're okay with the relationship, as long as we're committed to the relationship, things will work out, right? I'll get over it. You'll get over it. We'll both get over it. Okay. But so we can go for, a good period of time where I'm upset with you about something, whatever it happens to be, but I'm committed to the relationship. Okay. I know that you can be mad at me for a long period of time, but I also trust that you're committed to the relationship and that things will work out. Like I said, I'll get over it. You'll get over it. Things will work out as long as we're committed to the relationship. And that's the healthy aspect of that. But in this, there's really no commitment to the relationship. It's a commitment to how the other person feels, right? So, and I'm afraid if they feel a certain way, their mood changes, right? Then they're going to run off and they're going to abandon me, right? In situations like that, maybe you should get a mood ring, right? You can tell right off if how they're feeling by the mood ring there. But once again, the interdependence thing, I can listen to what you need in the relationship. We can negotiate on how to get those needs met for both of us in the relationship without feeling threatened, without feeling that you're going to leave the relationship, you're going to run off, you're not going to be here, you're going to abandon me in some way. But we may have spent years forming this relationship. I'm afraid that because of one little thing, you're going to run off and leave. So that's the difference between codependence and interdependence. Another one is when you don't need me, I feel like I'm not good enough. Now, this is sort of moving away from the caretaker type of codependence into more of the low self-esteem type of codependence, right? So if you don't need me all the time, okay, let me just say, if you don't need me all the time, then I feel like I'm not good enough, okay? That's the codependent thing. So I need you to need me all the time. Not healthy. Interdependence, we both enjoy and encourage each other to have time away from each other, okay? And you don't need to be spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with each other. That's not healthy. That may be codependence. In fact, I knew one couple who took vacation at the same time of the year, but they took it in two different places, right? The rest of the time they were very, loving with each other and what have you. But they just like, the woman liked to go to the mountains and she liked to hike and do things like that. The guy liked to go to the beach. And so they took their vacation at the same time every year, but one went to the mountains and one went to the beach, and they both had a great time, and they came back together after that. So they trusted each other, right? They encouraged each other to have time away so that they can get away from each other, because too much time around, even with people you like, sooner or later, everybody gets upset with me. I get on people's nerves if we're together too long at one time. So I encourage my wife every now and then, why don't you go do something? Why don't you go get away from this for a while? Codependence, any thoughts of separation cause me to feel unloved, unattached, and alone. Okay, so this codependence, any thought that we're going to be apart, any thought that we're going to separate or be separated causes me to feel, once again, like I'm not good enough. But also I'm feeling, if I'm not good enough, that means I'm unlovable. Okay. I'm going to be alone in life. Once again, those sort of fears of abandonment come up. And that's what causes some problems. And remember, the other thing about all of these things with codependence is I am going to act in a way to avoid them happening, right? So if I think that maybe you're going to leave, that's when I will start doing those things like caretaking, doing those enabling sorts of things to try to prevent that from happening, prevent what I think might happen from happening. In the interdependence part of that, we love our own uniqueness and independence, right? I got to get away myself. I encourage my wife to get away every now and then. I got to have my free time. I am an introvert by nature. I know you find that hard to believe, but I am an introvert by nature, and I need my time to myself. Okay, I need time in my own little hamster ball, right? My own little ferret ball. I need to go into it and just be by myself sometimes. Okay, so doesn't mean I'm not caring about anybody else. I'm just taking care of me. So we love that unique things about ourselves, and we enjoy our own independence at times. Codependence, you must tell me how you feel so I know how you feel. Once again, we can see how these things go together. We can see how these things sort of fit together. I got to know how you feel, because if you're not feeling like I'm feeling, then you're going to leave me, you're going to abandon me, et cetera, et cetera. So that's codependence. Interdependence, I don't pry into other people's personal space and trust that when they're ready, they'll start to communicate. My wife says, don't want to talk about something? Okay. Then I trust that whenever you're ready to talk about it, you'll let me know. I'm not going to continue to pry. To remember, we talked about personal space, right? I'm not going to get into that personal space and invade that. I know that when you're ready, you'll talk to me. When I invade someone else's personal space, that actually does what? That actually pushes them away even further, which then exacerbates all of these other feelings, okay? And I can push so hard that somebody can leave, right? They can say, you know, enough, I'm pushing too hard. You're pushing too hard. I need to get out of here. And then, boy, then I really go into overload, right? So oftentimes these things, we have a negative feedback loop going on instead of a positive feedback loop. And what we want is the positive feedback loop for this. All right. So what can I do about this? Okay. One of the things in the title today was why can't the other person see it? And the biggest reason that other people can't see that they're codependent is because what they're doing is fulfilling their needs. Okay. If what I do fulfills my needs, I don't see that as a problem, right? It's the reason psychopaths don't have a problem with using other people, right? They don't see that as a problem at all. Not to equate codependency with psychopathy, let me just say. But if I'm codependent, then these things that I'm doing, this enabling, this caretaking, at the moment, I think that it's working for me. Now, in the long run, what I end up with is it is not working for me at all. Oftentimes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I don't want somebody to leave me, and I end up making them leave because of my behavior. Or as the example I gave before, I step in and protect people from the consequences of their actions, and that ends up sooner or later catching up to them in some bad ways. So with that, when I'm looking at that sort of, why can't people see that they're codependent? Once again, it's because, well, at the time being, for the time being, what I'm doing is working for me, okay? And I'm not going to change that behavior. And why don't I do it? If I've been doing it for 20 years, right? If I've been in this codependent relationship for that long, maybe with a child or something like that, then it's very difficult for me to break because I've invested so much time and effort. It's almost the sunk cost effect, right? I've invested so much time and effort with this, I can't stop doing it. Even though I begin to see that it's not working for me now that we're getting into the long term. I still have very difficult problems doing something different. So what can I do about this? If it's me, okay, if it's for myself, right? I can set personal boundaries and stick to them, okay? Once again, don't want to cross those personal boundaries. I want to set these personal boundaries. I want to stick to them no matter what, okay? No matter what, I want to stick to those personal boundaries. I want to broaden my circle of support, spend time with friends, family, that sort of thing. The only person I'm spending time with is not my significant other, right? I don't want that to happen. So I want to broaden that circle of support. Once again, very similar to what would we do if, with a narcissistic relationship, right? One of the things that a narcissist does is isolate people, right? You don't have friends, my friends are good enough for you, right? That sort of thing. So sort of the same thing, getting out of codependency is I want to broaden my circle, right? I want to broaden that circle of support spend time with my friends, spend time with my family, listen to the feedback that they give me. If more than one of them is telling me I might be codependent, then I might be codependent. Okay. So spend time with them and enjoy your time with them when you're with them. Develop your own hobbies and do things by yourself, right? I keep bees. I've got bees out in my backyard out here. I've got a beehive that I take care of. My wife thinks it's great, but she's not interested in doing it. Okay, so she's fine sitting on the porch watching me do it. But didn't help that when I first got him, she had stung mite. So, but anyway, but develop your own hobbies. She likes to do things that I don't care to do. Like she likes to ride roller coasters. Okay, I have no desire. It doesn't mean anything to me. That's nothing to me. I don't care about that. Just like she doesn't care about my other things, and that's fine, right? It's fine that she likes to do that. Good for her. I'll go watch her ride, but I'm not going to ride with it. So develop your own hobbies, do things by yourself, get that independence, right? Separate from the relationship for set periods of time. That doesn't mean get divorced. It doesn't mean get an official separation. It may mean just take a weekend and go have a girls' night out or something, a boys' night out, something like that. Just spend some time to get away, to have some independent time together. Or I may just want to go out and be alone, right? So I feel the need to, it's getting to be hunting season. Okay, so this is traditionally, especially in Texas, the time of year when wives get to spend their own alone time while men are out hunting, right? Or vice versa, whichever it happens to be. But this is a good time of the year when people can get their own alone time, get their independence from each other while they're out hunting. Okay. If you think you're still codependent, or if you think that someone else may be codependent. So the other part of this was, how can I help? Okay. Well, remember that I can't make anybody do anything they don't choose to do. I can make you do things you don't want to do, but I can't make you do things you don't choose to do. You got to choose to do them. So maybe one way would say, hey, let's look at this questionnaire. Hey, let's look at this assessment on here. And if it comes out, then that gives you some place to start talking about it, right? Going to therapy may be that. Hey, there's some things we can talk. Maybe we can go see a counselor. Maybe we can go see a therapist. Okay. Sort of talk about some of these things that are going on. But there are some out there, the codependency questionnaire. Now, all of these things come from positive psychology. So they're oriented toward positive psychology. But the codependency questionnaire, you can go online, you can take that. You can actually print out the forms and then fill them out and look, see how you score on them. Okay, if you think you are or think somebody else might be, and have them do it together. Shifting codependency patterns, that's another resource there. You can look that up. Sort of the same thing with the codependence and the interdependence, right? We can look at, how do we know when we're in a codependent relationship versus how do we know we're in a relationship that's getting better, that's moving away from codependency. And then the codependent relationships, attitudes, beliefs, and outcomes survey. You want to do that as well. Once again, you may have noticed that a lot of the things that we talked about with this codependency had to do with thinking, right? Had to do with my thinking, me using a lot of thinking errors and things like that. That's, my beliefs are what my beliefs are. Doesn't mean that they're right, okay? And it doesn't mean that they're wrong, okay? One of the things about beliefs is they tend to be broad. Now, on a specific topic, I'm going to have thinking on that, and that thinking can be very off. But beliefs tend to be fairly broad, okay? They deal with many different situations, not just one or two situations, but with many different situations. And because of that broadness, they tend to be not good or bad. I mean, when we look at beliefs, when we look at risky beliefs, because the belief is risky, it does not mean it is bad, okay? For example, I should care about my loved ones and work to make them happy, okay? Now, is that a bad belief? No, it's not. But if I take it to the point of codependency, can it be? Yes, very much so, right? So once again, I have to look at that thinking. The belief itself is not necessarily bad, but I have to look at my thinking in specific situations. And then I may tend toward codependency, something like that. So beliefs, attitudes, outcomes, you can look at those as well. Another resource for codependency is Codependence Anonymous. Okay, it's a 12-step group, just like Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Addicts Anonymous, what have you. Okay, it's a 12-step group that they have and it's made up of codependents, right? People who suffer from codependency. So if you think you may be, then go there. If you think that someone you may know might be in a codependent relationship, maybe you can go with them to a CODA meeting, okay? As long as it's not a closed meeting, I'm sure you'll be welcome there. So Codependence Anonymous is one resource there. You can go to the website, it'll tell you local, you can find local schedules and things like that of when they're having, where they're having them, times, etc. Another one is Al-Anon, right? A support group for families and friends of alcoholics and addicts. That's Al-Anon, okay? So remember that originally codependency was people in relationships with alcoholics, right? So how did they deal with that? How did they deal with the family aspects of that? Al-Anon, right? In Al-Anon, I can talk to other people who are struggling with the same thing I am, who are struggling with family members who may be alcoholics, addicts, or in this case, codependent, right? So I can go and talk about that with them and listen to their stories and things of that nature. So Al-Anon family groups is one. If you want to read for yourself, there's several things that are out there apart from the Beatty things that we looked at previously. Codependency for Dummies is out there. Those 4 dummy books are usually pretty good. I've seen several of them. I haven't read the one for codependence, but I have Beekeeping for Dummies. Okay, found it very informative. Okay, so those are pretty good resources that whatever the topic is, the 4 dummies topic. Like I said, I did the beekeeping one. I found that very useful. So codependency, probably the same. Breaking Free of the Codependency Trap. So there's a good one for you. I think I may be in a codependent relationship. How do I get out of that? The Everything Guide to Codependency, which should contain just about everything, right, that you need to know about codependency. And then another one, You're Not Crazy, You're Codependent. Okay, so, and this is often the case. I've seen this as well, right, in private practice and things like that. People are in codependent relationships, and it's just so nerve-wracking. It's just so anxiety-producing and things like this that they think they're crazy. And they'll say, am I crazy? Am I really crazy? And no, you're not crazy. You're just codependent, right? You just have some issues that you need to work out. And we need to work on these things. The biggest one, setting boundaries, right? Okay, so there's some resources for that. If you listen to the tape by Beatty, the podcast that she did that I provided the link to there, she makes the comment in there that with all of her research in this area of codependence, she thinks that primarily codependence springs from unresolved grief and trauma in our lives, which sort of makes sense if you think about it. She spent a lot of time thinking about it. That's what she thinks, and you can listen to exactly what she says on the podcast. But if you're dealing with unresolved grief and trauma, if you think that may be part of the issue, a good resource for that is Jim Gordon's book, The Transformation, Discovering Wholeness and Healing After Trauma. And one of the points that he makes in the book is that we all experience some sort of trauma. We all experience grief in our life. Okay, so and he puts in there, how do you deal with that? What are some things that you can do to help deal with that, so that you don't become codependent, right? So you don't get there. So he talks about some of that. that's a very good book. I encourage you to give that a look. That brings us to the end of today. If there are any questions, I'll happy to take those. If you'd like to email me about anything, then there's my email address, or you can also look up the Institute online. So.
Very good. Very, very, very good. I'm going to include Dr. Mottern's contact information in the follow-up email that goes out to you. But what I think there were a couple of questions that people had or comments. But while you're doing that, I'll go through the CEU stuff again. Will you look at those if that would help you? And then we'll come back when I'm done with that and answer questions. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
Great, great. For those of you, we'll go over CEUs here, and while we're doing that, if you have any questions for Dr. Mottern, please put them in either the chat or the Q&A for him, and you can do that now, and he'll look at those while we're going over this. For those of you that are looking for CEUs, we are set up to do CEUs for licensed social workers and licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas. We also are offering certificates of attendance, but if you want a certificate for another license, you're more than welcome to get one. I've talked to people that have told me they've used them for other licenses in Texas and outside of Texas, but there's no guarantee there. In today's webinar, you must have attended the entire webinar, and it's good for an hour and a half of CEUs. You must also complete the Google survey evaluation that should pop up as you close out of Zoom today. But if it doesn't, you'll receive that in the email from me after the webinar today. That will actually go out today. So look for that. But please fill that out even if you're not looking for CEUs or any certificates, because we use that in responding to our goals and objectives that we set forth as we applied for funding to do these webinars. This Google survey will be up and live for 1 week from today. And then if you can give us 2 weeks after that to get those certificates to you, that would be great. We'd appreciate that. But after that point, if you don't get them by the 5th, feel free to reach out to me and we'll get them out to you. Like I said earlier, I did have a little bit of a hang up on the certificates, and so I'm a little bit behind on the last ones because of some software issues. But we're trying to work through that right now. But we should hopefully be caught up by the time we get to these 3 weeks from now. But I'm going to turn this. If we could go back to your address and put that up while you're answering questions, I think that would be great. There you go. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so we have a question here. What about when the other person has mental health issues, bipolar, adult child, or partner? I'm guessing that is a question about giving of myself to other people. That, I mean, if I'm in a relationship with someone, they have mental health issues, so I have to take care of them. I find myself the one being able, having to give of myself more than they're giving to me because they're not capable of that for whatever reason, right? This is one of those things where you're going to have to set boundaries on that. And the boundary here would be, this is something that professionals know very well. And, professionals get to only do 8 hours a day, then we get to go home and not think about it. Whereas if you're living with that person, you're living with them 24 hours a day. So you even more so need to inculcate this. But what professionals know is you can't pour from an empty cup. That if you love this person so much that you want to give to them and keep on giving, you're still going to have to take care of yourself. Otherwise, you're going to bring on your own health issues, not necessarily mental health issues, but physical health issues. And I've seen that many times over the years where people are caring for, partners or children or whoever it happens to be who have mental health issues. And as they continue to give, remember that's a subtraction. Remember we talked about I can do this without subtracting one from the other. If I keep subtracting from one, sooner or later, what's going to happen? I'm going to end up with 0, right? I'm going to end up with nothing. I'm going to end up with nothing to give. Okay. So when I set boundaries here, what I'm talking about is, try if however possible, if just for one day a week, right, you can get somebody else to come in and take care of them. One day a week or one day, a month, maybe, where I can just go, if possible, I can just go to a hotel down the street. And I don't have to worry about anybody. All right. Now, some of these things require money. So if you don't, that's fine. You can find other ways to do those. But oftentimes, that's one of the things that if I need to get away from the relationship, I don't have to take, a trip to Timbuktu, right? I don't have to pack up and go to the coast. Okay, if you're living in Central Texas or wherever, I can go. There's a hotel down the street. Okay, I just need to get away from the house for a while. I just need to get away from that. Get somebody to come in for just one day, see if they can take care of them while I go get some energy myself, while I go recoup some of that energy. So I'm thinking that's what you're asking, and my answer would be, yes, I understand that you got to live with that 24 hours a day. You're always being the one who's giving because the other person is unable to. But at some point, I'm going to have to take care of myself, or I'm just going to run out of energy to take care of anybody.
There are respite programs out there, and there's day programs out there, and some agencies can help you find some of those resources. And we have a number for the ADRC that actually you can call statewide and try to get help finding some of those resources. But I'll just throw that out.
Yeah, thank you. Another one, what do you do if you recognize your partner's unhealthy behavior? How do you handle if you have a small child? Is divorce the only option? Divorce is never the only option. Let me just say, we're not talking about narcissistic personality disorder, talking about psychopath. We're just talking about codependency, which can be bad, right? It can be bad for the person, but it's not something that can't be worked on, right? We can definitely work on this. Go get some counseling. Okay, between the two of you, you recognize those unhealthy behaviors, go talk to somebody, get a third party. Once again, if both people are committed to the relationship, we can always find a way to work that out. Okay, now if one person is not committed to the relationship, then pretty much the relationship is over. Okay, I don't care how much you want to think that you might be able to say that if one person's not committed, it's going to be over. No, divorce is not the only option. A person has some difficult behaviors going on, go to marriage counseling. Okay, go talk to a therapist, get those things worked out. If they're codependent behaviors, these are behaviors that can be changed, right? We can do things about these. We can change these things. So be hopeful about this. Don't be pessimistic about it. Be hopeful as much as you can. Because we can make strides in this. These are behaviors that we can change, that we can make changes in. So no, don't think that divorce is the only option. Okay, I don't know your specific situation, but just in general, I would say no, don't think that. What are some examples of personal boundaries? This would be something like, I want you to lie for me. I want you to make excuses for me, things like that. And my boundary says, I'm not going to do that. Right? I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to make excuses for you. Your behavior is your own. That would sort of be an example also of caretaking, right? That your behavior is your own. You accept the consequences of your behavior. I'm not going to violate my standards. I'm not going to lower my character in order to make excuses for you. Stuff like that would be an example of that. Of course, there are many others, but that would be one. There's another one down here. Okay, what do you do if your partner does not want to change unhealthy behaviors, such as drinking, spending money, things that also may affect the children? Well, you can't make anybody do anything they don't choose to do. Okay, and if you're staying and trying, you may be the one who's codependent, right? So if they don't want to change, you can't make them, but you must be able to take care of yourself and to take care of your children. Now, I realize this, telling somebody who's codependent, you need to set strict boundaries is sort of like telling an addict that, you just need to say no and not use drugs, right? It's the whole problem, right? I mean, that's the issue. That's the whole problem. So if you can't make the other person do anything, then you yourself seek some help, seek some counseling, seek some treatment. There's some, as Marty mentioned, there's some places out there that can provide that on sliding scales or even for free, that you can do that. So you don't have to spend a whole lot of money on that, but go talk to them and see what you need to do. Go through it with them, see how bad that problem really is. But you need to take care of yourself and you need to take care of your children. So you may have to set some boundaries, and the counseling, the therapy may help you do that, right? Like I said, telling somebody who's codependent, well, you just need to set boundaries is like telling an addict, well, you just need to stop using drugs. It doesn't necessarily work that way, but you can get help. Go get some treatment, and people can help you do that. Is it possible to have a healthy marriage with someone who has, is that bipolar or borderline personality disorder? Bipolar disorder. Yes, either one. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm tired from my presentation earlier today. It doesn't matter which one it is, bipolar or borderline. Yes, you can have a healthy marriage. I've known people who have that. In fact, I actually heard that as a topic with a presentation that someone gave some years ago I was at. He was in a relationship with someone who was borderline, and he was talking about that relationship and what they did and what have you. But either borderline or bipolar, once again, excuse me, my mind isn't totally here. But either way, it can. Now, are there going to be challenges in the relationship with anyone who has any mental health issue? Yes, of course there is. But it's something that can be worked through. I've known relationships that work out in that. So it's not a death sentence, okay, for the relationship, just because mental health issues are involved. Okay, oftentimes the skills you learn to help with the mental health issues can make the relationship much stronger. Okay, can the codependency be changed, fixed for the caregiver spouse? You can change yourself. You can, if you're codependent, you can change yourself. The other person is going to have to choose to change themselves. Once again, I can't make anybody do anything they don't choose to do. So if they choose not to do it, then they choose not to do it. That will depend on how much they value the relationship. Yeah, things can change. Things can change for the better. Don't give up, right? Don't give up on these things. Only at the last, when you run out of everything else, maybe. But before then, there's a lot of things that you can do. What if the person with a mental health issue is not homebound, but it is out and about, has a job, but does things that get them in trouble at work or with the law while taking proper medication? Choices and consequences, okay? This is one of the things I have to let their own consequences play out, okay? Choices and consequences. You make this choice, you get this consequence. Oftentimes we want to, part of the codependency will be me making excuses for why they're doing this, right? Well, they're doing this because of this, or they're doing this because of that. Well, in this case that you've given me, they may be on medication. They have some mental health issues, but they're on medication. Maybe the medication isn't what they need. Maybe you need to talk to a doctor, but if it is, and they continue to get in problems with the law and what have you, unfortunately, there are consequences that go along with that. And maybe they'll get treatment. I've said this before, criminal justice system in Texas is a great place for treatment. Use evidence-based practice in the treatment programs. That doesn't mean just straight prison, right? Doesn't mean just jail. You're not getting any education there. But CJAD runs programs for people with mental health issues. They have safe P programs, things like that, substance abuse programs, safe P program. They also have mental health programs that if somebody gets in trouble with the law, they can get into those programs where they're getting proper treatment and what have you to help them. So don't be afraid to let them, experience the consequences of their own actions. That may be just what they need. I've said before that I worked with Williamson County Adult Probation for several years. Worked at Central Texas Treatment Center. We had an 80% success rate with there. We dealt with substance abuse and criminal conduct, and that it was a treatment program, right? That people came there because they wanted to get better. Actually, they came there because they didn't want to stay in jail, but they left much better than they did. After they were there a while, they decided, this might not be a bad idea to change what I'm doing, right? So that was a great program, and there are other ones throughout the state. Like I said, I'm not talking about just letting them go to jail and just letting them go to prison. That's probably not going to help anybody. That's not helping anyone. But finding a proper program for them within the criminal justice system, those do exist. So don't be afraid to let them experience the consequences of their actions. You can't continue stepping in on that. As a mother, there are times I feel like perhaps we get stuck in the helicopter mom codependency effect. Yeah. Are there any tips as to how to build healthy bonds without enabling our children or building codependence? Yes, there is. And that's just pretty much what I said, is let them experience the consequences of their actions. I heard an old sailor once. This was a guy back on the East Coast who taught kids how to sailboats, right? I mean, and you live at the coast, you learn how to sail fairly early. So he had a lot of kids, and they asked him what his secret was. He had been doing this for decades. And they asked him what his secret was, and he said, munificent neglect. I let them make their own mistakes, right? Now, you're not going to let them kill themselves, right? But I let them make their own mistakes, and they learn from the mistakes. That helicopter mom thing that goes on is, I don't want my children to experience any negative consequences. Well, doggone, how are they going to learn if they don't experience negative consequences, right? They've got to experience some negative consequences to learn. I got to stick my hand on the stove to learn. Don't do that, right? No matter how many times I've been told, I don't really get it until I stick my hand on it, and then I'll never do it again, right? Not on purpose anyway. So that sort of thing. How do I do this? How do I make bonds with my children? I need to get my picture in their quality world. Now, that's language from reality therapy. And William Glasser has a book out there on talking to your teens, developing relationships with your teens and stuff like that with your children. I encourage you to look at that. William Glasser. I can't remember the title, but it's something like that, building relationships with your children, with your teens, something like that. But he talks about that in the book, on how I really get my picture in their quality world, right? And how I do that is I help them meet their needs. I help them meet their needs, though, in healthy ways. I don't want to enable them in unhealthy ways, because they're going to learn to do the unhealthy things, right? So I encourage them in healthy skills and healthy behaviors, and I help them whenever they do that. And I get my picture in their quality world, so that when I talk to them, when I say something to them, if my picture is in their quality world, they are more likely to hear what I have to say. If all I do is nag, complain, blame, engage in those negative things, then they're not. My picture is not going to be in their quality world, and they're not going to hear what I have to say about what they should be doing. Yeah, definitely hard to tell if it's codependency when you're in the thick of it, right? Yeah, it's sort of like I'm in the middle of it. So how do I know? That's sort of when I'm going to have to look around and ask my support group And if I look around and I don't have a support group, that may be a good sign that I'm actually codependent, right? But if I look at, friends, family, this sorts of things, and talk to them about the issue and listen to the feedback that they give you. Like I said, more than one person tells you might be codependent. You might give some thought to that. Thank you, Darla. Thank you for saving my brain today. Either way, however, either borderline or bipolar.
There's two
because the with bipolar especially with type 2 in the mania and what have you, can be very difficult to deal with for family members and things like that. But yes, yeah. So borderline, yes, that's those are equally as frustrating at times. But most certainly there's treatment for that. There's counseling. You can work through those things. Just because somebody has a mental health issue is not it's not a death sentence for the relationship at all. So you can live wonderful lives, wonderful, fulfilling lives together, as long as you're working on the relationship, as long as you're working on that together.
There's a couple in the Q&A, and I'll make a comment where you're looking at those. But recently I heard something that I appreciate, and I realize this isn't attributed to everybody that's raising grandchildren, but it basically said, you can raise your children and spoil your grandchildren, or you can spoil your children and raise your grandchildren. And I think that was really a profound thing that came through. That parenting, understanding that our job is to make them healthy adults and not necessarily our best friends,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a difference between short-term pleasure and long-term happiness. Right. Yes. So I really have to evaluate that and say, is what I'm doing right now going to get them long-term happiness, or am I doing it just for some short-term pleasure? So, yeah. So at what point is the desire to make someone else happy problematic? Well, once again, if I'm subtracting from myself in order to make them happy, if it's making me unhappy and making them happy, I might want to look at that, okay? We should be able to negotiate differences in our lives where we can both have a win-win situation. If I'm coming out with a win-lose situation and I'm on the lose situation side of that all the time, that's problematic, okay? There needs to be some balance. And let me just remind you, because I used to think, there's some self-disclosure here, I used to think that, a win-win situation was, okay, in this situation, I'm going to win and you're going to lose. In the next situation, I don't really care about it, so you can win and I can lose. Well, now we've created win-win situations, right? That is not a win-win situation. That is two win-lose situations. What we want to do is for each of those situations, find some way where we can find happiness in our lives. We can find something that we agree with, that we can that buy into, and create win-win situations. Once again, it's problematic if it's win-lose and I'm always on the lose side. That's problematic. It's really problematic if it's still win-lose. I want to try to make win-win situations. I understand that's very difficult to do, but at least for some of us. But that would be the optimal thing to do. How much responsibility for others' feelings is healthy? Zero. Okay. I don't make you feel anything. I don't care who you are, if you're a child or you're an adult. Your thinking is what creates your feelings. Okay. So I can explain to you, right? I can try to explain why I'm doing these things that may make you feel bad, but I take no responsibility for anybody else's feelings ever. Okay. You are always in control of your own feelings. Best way to help a family member, grab them by the hand and take them to a CODA meeting, right? Take them to an Al-Anon meeting, get them there. If the family member is codependent, right? If that's what's going on, then grab them by the hand and take them there. Let them listen to some stories. They don't have to participate, right? They don't have to stand up and share their story with everybody. Okay, but they can listen to other people as they say, this is what I've been through. This is my experience. This is where I've found strength. This is where I've found hope. And maybe by listening to them, they can do that. Maybe you want to buy them that book, right? Just leave it sitting around somewhere. Ask them if they've read it. Well, I got this for you. You said you hadn't read it. Maybe it'd be interesting. Leave it sitting around someplace. But yeah, one of the things is grab them and take them to a meeting, right? You don't have to be, like I said, if it's an open meeting, you don't have to be codependent yourself to sit through it. But those have helped many different people, so you can do that. Or at least if you don't like 12-step meetings, if you don't like that sort of thing, then take them to counseling. I want to go see a therapist. I want to go see a counselor. I want you to go with me, and take them there, and then talk about what's going on. Okay.
Well, if you'll just go to the last slide, we'll talk about our next presentation. And once again, just absolutely exceptional. I mean, just incredible information. And the next one coming up on the 28th is psychopath, sociopath, narcissist. What of these best describes dad and how to manage it while caring for him? That's going to be, again, very interesting. But doctor, thank you so very much. Just exceptional insight, exceptional information, great resources. We surely appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hey, y'all, everybody have a great day.